But maybe what we ought to do is just start by introducing ourselves and talking a little bit about why we even care about reading to grandkids. So who wants to start? Eloise, you want to start?
My name is Eloise Ginty, and I am a retired educator, and I am a grandmother of quite a number of grandkids. I have a really great job with Readeo, where I help with a lot of different things, and one of them is working with the publishers to pick out awesome books for our library. Reading matters to me for a lot of different reasons, but it really feels almost like a basic need to me with my grandchildren. And when I wasn't able to do that because of separation by distance and then also COVID, I became determined to figure out a way to connect with my grandchildren through the power of read aloud.
My name's Marilee Woodfield, and I'm in Texas, and I'm a grandmother of 3, and my grandkids are now all closer to me, but I did have my first very distanced, and so trying to figure out a way to connect with him and have it not be I guess I was probably influenced by my experience with my daughter, who was quite shy with her grandparents when she was little, because she only saw them a couple of times a year. And so it was, it took 2 or 3 days for her to warm up to them when they came to visit or when we'd go there. And so I didn't want to be that for him. I wanted to be able to know him. I wanted him to know me. And so, we just from the get-go spent a lot of time on FaceTime trying to talk and so just trying to figure out a way to connect with him was always a challenge and always a concern, because I did want to have a connection with him, that I couldn't be there for all of the things. So,
and I'm Lynnae Allred, and grandmother of 8. Marilee and I are sisters and co-founders of a little organization we call playdatebox.com, which is just the outgrowth of what we started to do as grandmas in order to try to connect with our grandchildren who were a little bit too far away for us to have that relationship with that we wanted to have. And so we figured out that we would need to be more intentional about creating opportunities to play and spend time and develop relationships with them. And since we couldn't really find anything out there that seemed to help that, we did our own thing, and we just invent and share those ideas together. Realized coming to this end of my life how much joy that literature and illustrations and beautiful books have brought into my world, and I just want that to be part of my grandchildren's lives as well. So
I was bound and determined to find some quality way to connect with my grandkids for many of the same reasons that both of you have just talked about. And I had always made it a priority to spend really great chunks of time with them. Even though I was working full time, it just had to be done. It was not a question. But when that all came to a screeching halt, I was looking for other ways to connect with them, and nothing was working, not to my standard anyway. I wanted it to be fun and kid-centered and rich. And I looked and looked and looked. There was nothing out there. I was starting to get really discouraged and feeling sort of at a loss of how to maintain the relationships that I had with them and to build relationships with the new little ones that were coming along at the same time. So I just was Googling out there looking for stuff, and there's so much stuff, but there's so much junk. And I was sorting through the junk, and I was just like, and then Readeo popped up, and I just said, oh my gosh. So Readeo is an online platform where it combines video chat with read aloud. There's a really nicely developed library to choose from, really wonderful, high quality literature. And the minute I popped on there and I had a book chat, which is what we call, having the video chat while reading aloud with my grandkids, and I just saw how engaged they were and the light in their eyes, then the love started flowing back and forth again, and we laughed, and just had fun together again, and it sustained, which nothing else I had found would sustain their attention or make them laugh or make them want to spend time with me, virtually. And this did. And I just thought, my goodness, what an amazingly simple idea, and yet how very, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I have taught preschool for 35 years, and the last 17 has been preschool music. And so most of my music curriculum is literature based. So I will choose a book and then create an activity having to do with music around that. And so it's just been something that I have loved doing for forever. And so trying to find something that, as Eloise said, is really engaging for my grandchildren is really critical, because if they're not engaged, they're off and gone, and they're small. And so it's not like they're just going to sit and appease me to be listening to whatever. And so you have to really make it engaging. And so that's one of the ways that I have created that opportunity with my grandkids in trying to read with them over, is to incorporate the music element with it, so that there's just lots of good books that are also singable. So that's been my focus and my direction with my kids.
When we started out trying to have these FaceTime or Google Duo calls with the grandkids, and all you ever saw was nostrils, and kids are super not engaged in having a conversation with grandma. They want to show you their toys, or but to have something where you could actually connect and share something that was fun for both of you. So that's the reason I started to try to read to grandkids. Is like, well, okay, we've exhausted everything in my repertoire about what's going on at preschool, what's going on with your brother in about 35 seconds. And so now they're checked out, but I still wanted to talk. And so a book became the way to keep their attention. It's a really substandard experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say, for a child to sit there with a phone and try to have an experience with a book, when what grandma really wants is the lap and the big picture book and the warmth of that physical connection. And so I've struggled quite a bit with trying to figure out how to bridge that gap through the technology. And so the first time we opened Readeo, it was just sort of like a breath of fresh air. It was like, all the pieces of the iPhone tripods and the phones, and getting the screen bigger and figuring out where to stand so I could see the printed page and still have them be able to see the printed page. All of that evaporated, because now the book was front and center, and I could see their faces and I could see mine, and we could kind of have that. The book chat experience was something really new and wonderful to me, because, like I say, all the difficult pieces fell away, and it was just the book and me and the grandchildren, and it was really nice to have that first Readeo experience go as well as it did. Eloise, as an educator, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Reading is really fun for grandparents, and Readeo is fun for us to use, but what does the research say about why this kind of grandparent and grandchild reaction is foundational for a child's literacy outcomes? I mean, the teachers are reading to them, hopefully the parents are reading to them. Do the grandparents even matter?
They bring sort of an inherent patience and just an awe of their grandchild, where parents are with their kids all day long, every day. And it's, and sometimes parents have these aha moments like, oh my gosh, look at you, you're my child, you're amazing. But grandparents feel that every single minute they're with that grandchild. They're always, we're always in awe of how special our grandkids are, which then that concentric circle is also, and oh my gosh, my child is raising this child. Like, there's so much pride and love and fulfillment that grandparents get. And so when you bring that to a read aloud situation, I think there's a really another special connection. I think there's always a connection with any person who reads with a child aloud. There's just something magical about that. But for grandparents in particular, that sharing of that quality time and that bonding in that rich way, and just that exchange of sort of mutual love that goes on is special, in particular, I think, to grandparents that read aloud to their grandkids. And I also think that it brings another level of sort of social interaction for the children too, that feels kind of above and beyond, or just sort of an extra special treat almost, you know. I mean, for those lucky children who their parents read to them regularly, that's just what you do in your house for those kids that are that lucky to have that. But with grandparents, it brings sort of the frosting on the cake. It's just something a little bit more special to be able to share that read aloud experience with a grandchild, for the, you know, for the grandchild with the grandparent, and vice versa. So I think there is a value add when grandparents have that opportunity to read aloud, either in person or through a program like Readeo that doesn't come from any other read aloud situation.
Marilee, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to speak to that. A lot of the research is showing that connections with grandparents, between grandparents and grandchildren, is critical to positive outcomes for the grandkids and positive outcomes for the grandparent as well. So
nice.
It's a mutually symbiotic, fantastic experience for, you know, everybody gains something from that. And so it's a win-win. You just cannot lose whenever you create, whether it's doing it online over Readeo or having it in the lab. Any of those connections are going to improve, you know, reading skills and self-worth and all those kinds of things with kids. And it's also going to raise the well-being of the grandparent in creating that connection. So
that's an awesome point. That's really nice.
I think that we discovered that it took us a while to figure out that that was what was going on with Playdate boxes. In the beginning, we thought we were gifting our grandchildren a little box of extension activities to go along with a book. But what I soon discovered was that when the Playdate box went to their house, I felt left out. The Playdate box was for me. The Playdate box was for grandma, to be able to sit together with the grandkids and have an experience with them and not be separated from that experience. And so if they are doing handprint pictures, or they're decoupaging a birdhouse, or planting zinnia seeds in a little pot at their house, I need to be part of that with my own hands and my own person in order to feel really that same level of joy. And that's what was missing in the long distance relationships. I'd Amazon them a box of something and had all kinds of fun picking out these really fun things for them to have, and then never get to experience the playing part of it myself. And so that's been one thing that we have learned, is that it's probably a really great version of self-care for grandma to participate in that play, and for grandpa as well. I mean, we all happen, the three of us, to be grandmothers, but I think the same is true for grandfathers. And as you already alluded to, Eloise, a lot of grandparents, and maybe grandfathers especially, don't have that natural inclination to know how to play, to know how to read aloud, to know how to do some of those kinds of things. And again, the benefit of Readeo is it eliminates all of that angst. You just pick a book and you read, and you let the magic happen from there, and it makes it so simple. So it's a really beautiful tool. Maybe
I love the way you're talking about that as self-care. That's a new idea for me. I know we get so much feedback from grandparents and other family members too that have discovered Readeo that for whatever reason, you know, can't have the child in their lap or next to them. And they say things like, you know, it just brings me to tears, and it means the world to me, and sort of these general statements like that. And I think you've just sort of been able to label it, if you will, as how much of a need it is for the adult. We so often think about the benefits of that for the child, and there are so many. It's just so important. But I love the idea of thinking about it from the adult's perspective and the self-care, and just naming it that, it's not just for the kids. In fact, if the kids have an enriched life already, it's just an added, enrichment for them. But it's like I said, I think right when we just began, it felt like a basic need for me, for my self-care, to connect like that with my grandchildren. And so I think that's a really important point. And I love that we're talking about that right now.